Hi everyone, it's Funny Animator Jim TV, and in this video I'm going to make a tutorial for how to program this my new cloud multiplayer version in Scratch. So, and you can see this is basically how it works. If you want to see that, I made this plan before actually going into it. So as you see, when you click the green flag, you wait 3 seconds, and then you're put into this lobby. I'm not going to be showing how to add the usernames. See, there the usernames for everybody, and these players have all left, and so they're not actually online right now. But if there was another person online at this moment and they came in, then I would see their player moving around, and you can spin and do stuff like that. So this is what we're going to be making. Alright, so I've made a new project here. I'm just using my other account. So we're going to have 2 sprites. So we're going to have 1 sprite for the multiplayer management and 1 sprite for the players. So, you know what, I'll keep the cat and I'll just make a new sprite and call this sprite multiplayer. There's actually going to be no costumes in here. You don't actually need this sprite. You could use the backdrop, but I like to have my own sprite for it. And then this sprite, we'll call it players, or like that. So when you create your players, we're just going to do this. So we're just going to make, you don't have to do this, but this is how I like to do it. Just make a circle, outline, maybe 5, and you can hold shift and drag to make a perfect circle. And then if you'll notice, there's that little plus in the middle, the crosshair. You just drag it around until you see the actual cross, and just drag, and it'll snap to it. That's a new feature that they added recently, which is really cool. And then I'm just going to type a 1 and just drag it there so that everybody will know this is player 1. Actually, I'm going to change the font because there can be some glitches with the fonts. They need to fix some of these. Alright, and I'm just going to center it. So, and I'll just make these a little thicker. You don't have to do all this. I'm just having fun. Alright, there we go. So that's our, and also with the costume, you just name it 1, like that. That'll help us. So we go into the multiplayer sprite, and we're going to get 1 green flag clicked. And we're going to need a couple variables. I'm going to assume that you know how to make some basic games. So, and what variables are. So we're going to make a couple variables. The first one that's really important is my player number. Make it for all sprites. So this one is going to keep track of what the individual player that's playing the game, what their player number is. So if I'm player 1, then this variable will be set to 1, like that. If I'm on another computer and I'm as player 3, then this number is going to be set to 3. So it's only specific for the person that's playing. So at the start, we're going to set it to 0 because they're not a player yet. And we're going to need so the first thing we need to do is figure out what player number the player actually is. So we need to check. Well, also we need a couple cloud variables. So I'm just going to show you how to make it for 4 players. So we're going to do P1. So you type P1 and then check this little cloud variable block. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that 4 times. P2, P3, and P4. So we got 4 cloud variables. You can hide all of those. Alright, so now we're gonna, so basically what we're gonna do is we need to make a block. So one of these pink blocks, click make a block, and I like to call it find slot, find slot. So, and do not check this run without screen refresh, so leave that blank. So here's our new block, and we're just going to immediately do it. So what this block is going to do is it's going to check all the active players, and if their cloud variable is changing, like they've got a heartbeat, then that person's active and they're not going to be able to take that slot. But if there's an inactive player, this new player is going to latch onto it and get their own player number. So that's what this block's going to do. So we also need variables called old p1 tick, and just make this for all sprites, not a cloud variable, just old p1 tick, and I think old p2 tick, and I think you can see where this is going. Old p3 tick, old p4 tick. The P just stands for player. So you can hide all those. So at the beginning, we're going to set old P1 tick, P2 tick, 3 tick, and 4 tick to these variables P1, P2, P3, and P4. So this variable, this old P1 tick, it's saving the old version, and then we're gonna wait 3 seconds. You can make, I like 3 seconds. You can make it 10 seconds if you want to be really safe. So then we're gonna, actually, if else, yeah. So we wait 3 seconds and we're gonna see if anything has changed, because when these players are playing, we're gonna have these variables constantly changing. So that would mean that they're alive. But if they're not playing, then these variables are not changing. So there's an inactive player and our new guy can take the slot. So actually I'm going to hide that so it doesn't get annoying. So we're going to check each of these and see if they're inactive. So if old P1 tick equals the new player one, because remember this, we waited 3 seconds. If nothing has changed, then the old tick is the same as the new player, as the new tick. So we're going to set my player number to 1, because the player was so inactive that their cloud variable didn't even change in 3 seconds, so we're going to take that slot. And the same thing for player 2. We put that in the if else. So if player 1 is inactive, we're going to take the slot. If he's not, then the variable changed, so we're going to go to the next one. And if old player 2 tick equals player 2, set my player to 2. And you can, whoops, sorry, didn't mean to add a comment. You can see where this is going. I'm going to minimize that. You see where this is going. Old P3 tick equals P3, whoops, sorry, P3. And if old P4 tick equals P4, set my player number to 3 and then 4. Otherwise, all 4 players are active. Like, they're all changing. We set my player number to 0 and we'll just say stop all. Actually, let's make a couple costumes here. Let's use black. Checking for online players. Put that right here. And then another costume. Lobby is full. Whoops. Lobby is full. Please try again later. Always say please and thank you. And yeah, you can center it like that, which is really useful. So lobby's full, please try again later. And we're going to set that right here to the full costume. Otherwise, checking for online players. At the start we show it, at the end we hide it. So if the person, oh, and also go to 0, 0. I don't know why it always centers it at 3628. So we find a slot. Now let's see what happens. So we're looking for a slot, and we took player 1 because player 1 was just, nothing was changing. So we took player 1 automatically, which is what we want. So now the player, we've got a player number. Now we need to make some more variables and set some more variables. So make my X for all sprites, my Y. I like to use my because it makes sense. You'll see later. Now we need another one called my tick. Now this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the heartbeat stuff, how this variable is changing. In the cloud variable, we're gonna have the tick constantly changing, a number between 100 and 900, and that number is just going to be constantly changing every frame. And if the number is the same, then, and if the number's not changing at all, then that gives this number a chance to check if the player's inactive. So we're going to set my X to 0, set my Y to 0, set my tick to 100. So I like to use a tick between 100 and 900. So like it'll go 100. Actually, you can go 999. So 100 all the way to 990, and then it goes back to 100. So it resets. And I like to give it that 3-digit number. You know what? Let's also make another one called my direction. We can hide all these. I like to keep the my player number showing though. So my direction to 0. So that's our slot block. So every time, once the player's found a slot, unless it was full, then it's going to stop it. It resets everything that needs to be set. So that's that block. Alright, now we need to be able to send the player's information to the cloud. So we need another block. Call it set cloud. So I like, and you can make this run without screen refresh. So set cloud, just do it right after. So set cloud. So actually, if yeah, you can just do this. If wait, no, yeah, we should make a couple more variables. So just make these variables I1, I2. These are just variables that we can use to count things if we randomly need to, or just set things randomly. So we're going to set I1 to a bunch of join things. Join. We should get 4 of them like that. So join my tick, and then what I like to do is my X plus 2000. So that way it's always a 4-digit number. So like no matter what X is, like if I'm at 0, it's going to be a 4-digit number. If I'm at 135, it's going to be a 4-digit number. If I'm at negative 1756, it's going to be a 3-digit. Oh, okay, well, yeah, that won't work, but that's not going to be often that you go that far. So anything between 1,000, like negative 1,000, you can make this number bigger. But anyway, my X plus 2000, just to make it always a 4-digit number. So my Y plus 2000, my direction plus 400, because direction can only have so many inputs. So my direction, just join all of these, and that's going to give you a crazy number. Wait, let's get some ticks here, or whatever our values are. That's our number. So that's like the number that we would set to the cloud. So you set I1 to this, and set P1, the cloud variable, to I1. So this whole thing, and you might ask, why couldn't we just do this? Why can't we just put it in there? Because we're gonna have sorry, I'm using a mouse that's really annoying. We're gonna have if my player number equals 1, set P1 to I1. If my player number equals 2, set player 2 to I1. And if my player number equals 3, 4, P3, P4, like that. So you can see I like to have this up here instead of putting it in every one of these. So does that make sense? You just set the cloud variable. You set this number to all. You set the cloud variable to all these numbers joined together, And then what we need to do is have our forever loop. So we're going to have a forever loop right here. So we need a new block. Decode cloud. Oh wait, I was creating a variable, sorry. Here, block. Decode cloud. Run without screen refresh. So what this is going to do, we're going to put it in here. Decode cloud, and then put set cloud. Or I'll do that later. So decode cloud. So what this is going to do is it's going to put, we're going to need 4 lists. So make a list. P1 info. P2 info. You see where this is going. P3 info. And P4 info. Wait, can I just press enter to do this? No, you can't. Oh, you can. It's okay, so I don't have to click OK every single time. So we need those 4 lists. That's going to hold each player's individual information, like their X position, their tick, their costume, or their direction, their Y position. It's going to be in each of these so that it's easy for us to understand. So at the start of decode cloud, we're going to delete everything of the P1 info and P2 info and all the lists. So we delete everything. Now we need a new block. Build player list. Run without screen refresh and put 2 number inputs in here. So wait, what letters did I use for that? Okay, C and N. So it's going to be confusing. So build player list. We're going to have it right here. We're going to have 4 of these. You can guess what's going to go in those. So in the first one, the C, the capital C is for the cloud variable. So put those in there. And then the best way that I was able to figure out how to do this was 1, 2, 3, 4. So you put the cloud variable in the first one and then the actual number in the second one. That might seem weird, but you just have to do it. Alright, so now we're going to use our second I variable, our second number variable. So set I2 to 1. And now we're going to need 2 new blocks. 2 new pink blocks. So gather numbers, and you're going to see what this does soon. Gather numbers. I'm just going to say exactly what I wrote here. In I1, start I, then text, length L, and then of C, like that. So that's gotta be really, oh no, lowercase c, sorry. Yeah, because that'll be, you can't have 2 that are the same, because we had that capital C earlier, so we need a lowercase c this time. So gather numbers in I1, so it starts at number I, the length is L, and the thing that we're doing it off of is C. So that's what it should look like. So you have I, L, and C as inputs. So okay, now you have this block. So what this is going to do, it builds a list for each of them, and at the start we're going to get, so we set it to 1. So what it's going to do is it's going to decode, it's going to take our crazy, wait, let's set to the cloud, set cloud. It's going to take our crazy long number and break it up into pieces and then put it in the list. So the second block we're going to make is add X to list N. Like that. I'll make it a capital N. Like that. And run without screen refresh. Wait, did I make the last one run without screen refresh? Yeah, I did. So you can see gather numbers. So at the start we set it to number 1 because it's the first part of the list. And the first item that we have in this variable, the 100, is the tick. So the length is 3. of the cloud variable that we put in there, like that. So of the cloud variable. And what the gather numbers is going to do is it's going to extract the first 3 numbers of here, and it's going to put them in the variable I1. So set I2 to I, set I1 to blank. So you just delete it. Whoops, sorry. So you just highlight whatever's in there and just press delete. Then repeat L, so repeat the length of however long, so repeat 3 times in our case. Set I1 to join, to join I1 letter I2 of C, and then change I2 by 1. Whoops, I2 by 1. So this probably makes no sense, but so let's say we're given, so what's going to come out of here? So our variable is, our variable's P1. This is going to take, and we do this, we set I2 to 1. This is going to take the first 3 letters of this variable and put them in I1. So we're going to see what happens. I1, so like we can take the first 3 letters of this variable and we're going to see what happens to I1. It gets 100. We can do this anywhere. So P1, like the next three letters are 200. So we start at letter 4 and we get 200 in there. So it's a little confusing to wrap your mind around, but what this is doing is it's just setting the I2 to whatever the start is. So whatever the start is, then it gradually repeats in the length, repeats the number of times here. It gradually adds to this I1 variable the letter number of whatever we're trying to get, and then it changes that letter number by 1 so it can get the next number the next time it repeats around. So that's basically what this is doing. Yeah, and now after we've got this, we need to add it to the list. So we need to add it to the list N. So add to list N, and what we need to put inside, because the tick is just a 3-digit number, so we can just put it in there. So add I1, because that's what we got out of this. Add I1 to list N. That's going to put it in the proper list. So when we come over here, we're going to say if N equals 1. So if it was telling us to put it in list 1, then we add whatever is in there, X, to P1 info. If N equals 2, we add X to P2 info. If N equals 3, we add X to P3 info. And if N equals 4, then we add it to P4 info. So that's what that's going to do. You're going to see what happens. So we're player 1 right now. And let's see what happens when we... Let's build our player list so far. We get our 100 in there. So the next thing we got to do is the X position and Y position. We got to add those. So we're just going to do this. And I2 has actually been changing this whole time, so it's actually prepared for the next number. So we can just start there. The X position is 4 digits long of the cloud variable. And remember how we offset it by 200 earlier? Well, now we got to subtract the 200 to bring it back. I mean, it was 2,000. I'm sorry, 2,000. So I1 minus 2,000. Now we got to do the Y position, which is the same thing. It'll know where to start it. And finally, the direction. And we offset it by 400, and it's 3 digits long. because remember up here we added direction to send it to the cloud, and now we got to break it up and add it to the list. So let's build our whole player list. See what happens. I'll delete everything. There's our list. So we were at 100, 0, 0, 0. So our tick is 100, our X position 0, our Y position 0, and our direction is 0. And you can see that the other lists, because they didn't have their cloud variable is just 0, because we haven't done anything to it at all. Alright, so that's our decode cloud block. And now we just set it. Oh wait, so we got our decode cloud, so that just breaks it up into the lists. Now we have to get our players working, because we have the list, we just need to tell them where to go. So we need a broadcast frame. I like to put an underscore, because when you put an underscore before it, it will be the first thing that shows up on your list of messages. So if you have a lot of messages, your frame will still be there. So we broadcast frame. This is everything. Yeah, I'm not forgetting anything. Good. So players. So let's go into our players. Yeah, I'm viewing this on another tab, so I don't make a mistake. Hang on a second. Alright, so now we're in the player sprite. So when the green flag is clicked, we're not actually going to use a different sprite for each of these. We're just going to use one sprite and then create clones of itself. So I'm assuming that you know what clones are and how they work. So if you don't, you'll still probably be able to understand this. So at the start, we're going to hide, and we need a new variable. And this is important for this sprite only. If it's not for this sprite only, it won't work. Clone number. Actually, I make it lowercase c. Why not? Clone number for this sprite only. Okay. So at the start, we're going to set clone number to 0. And then how many players do we have? We have 4 players. Change clone number by 1 and create clone of myself. Whoops, excuse me. Where is it? There it is. Create clone of myself, and then at the end set clone number to P. I like to do this because then you know which sprite is the original, which sprite is the parent. That's why I say P. So what's going to happen is it sets clone number to 0, then not P4, not change P4, change clone number by 1. Sorry. So change clone number by 1. So the first one's going to be 1. And it creates a clone. It's going to have its own 1 variable. Then it changes again, 2, creates clone 3, 4. So they're going to be 4 clones, each with their own clone variable. So now, clones can receive broadcasts. So when I receive frame, we're going to have an if-else in here. So if the clone number equals P, so if it's the parent, then this is where we're going to have our control for the player. So we're gonna set my tick, or no, change it. Change my tick by 1. And if my tick is greater than 998, I guess. Yeah. If my tick is greater than that, set my tick to 100. So it's going to cycle between these, right? If we do this forever, you're going to see what happens. It's just going to, well, that's really, really fast, but you're going to see it's just going up to 900 and then it goes back to 100. So it's always 3 digits long, which is what we want. So we have this. Now, point in direction, so we're having our direction thing. You don't need this direction thing, but I like to do it because why not? Point in direction, my direction. Actually, let's do that later. So we're just going to have set my X and my Y, because that's what the player is. And remember, after this, it's going to get set to the cloud. So my X and my Y to mouse X and mouse Y. That should be good. And set my direction to the direction. Doesn't that make sense? You set all this to what it actually is. And to get the direction accurate, first we point in direction, my direction, and then if key left arrow is pressed, or you could do right arrow, key right arrow, where is it? There it is, it's up here, I forgot. If key right arrow is pressed, change, or no, just turn like 10 degrees, and then if key left arrow is pressed, turn -10 degrees. That's the same thing as turning to the left. So we have this, that's our control, so we can see if we have our my tick and direction and all that stuff. Once we get it, you can see our numbers are changing. If we were to show it, well, it doesn't matter, but those are our numbers, so you can see. And if we change our direction, we can press the arrow keys and it changes our direction for us, which is great. So that's what we want. So these guys are so the frame, this is the clone number P for the control of the player, but now we need the actual player guys displaying on screen. So otherwise the clone number is one of these clones. So we show them. You could have them say something if they wanted, like you could say clone number if you wanted, I guess. Switch costume to clone number. Speaking of which, we need to make more costumes for those guys. That's why we did this. That's why we named it 1, so that we could easily easily switch to the correct costume. So 2, you can make them any colors you want. You can do anything you want. Nobody's gonna judge you. So 2, 3, let's make it blue. Blue. Why is that red? That's weird. And 4, let's make it a nice yellow. 4. So we have everything we need, and you see we need to name them the correct costumes so that it knows which costume to switch to based on its clone number. So now, lastly, we need to have a bunch of if-elses so that it knows if the clone number is equal to 1, then go to X, actually, set X, yeah, let's do that, set X, set Y, and point in direction. So set X to, now, item 1 of our list is the tick, item 2 is the X position, item 3 is the Y position, and item 4 is the direction. So that's our formula. So item 2, whoops, what the heck is that? Why is that? Okay, that was weird. So we have this, and we're just going to duplicate it. So that's for the player 1, because it's taking it from that list. Now, clone number 2, take everything, the same thing, the same item numbers from player 2 info. You duplicate it, and P2 info, I mean P3, sorry. P3, and this has to be clone number 3. P3 info, and clone number 4. P3 info. Excuse me, I'm not getting my numbers right. These should be P4 info. And there we go. I think that's everything. Yeah. So we saved it. Let's hide all of this. And the last thing we need to do is come over here and make sure after we broadcast that since we've gotten our new information from that player, we need to set it to the cloud. That should be everything we need for this project, so let's take a look. Checking for online players. 1. Okay, that's weird. So let's just set my direction to 90 at the beginning. Yay, and there we go. Actually, we don't need that say stuff because they've already got their position, so just put say blank so they don't say anything. So item 1 is there, and I think that should be everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it, and let's see, so cloud multiplayer for YouTube tutorial. Alright, so we saved it. Now we're going to share it. Let's go to the project page and share it, and now I'm going to get on another tab and see if it works. Alright, and it works. So I logged on to another tab, and you can see there I am. I'm player 2, so I'm player 1 on this one. I'm player 1 over here. And it is laggy because that's just out cloud. If you don't know cloud variables, you can only have one variable change every 1/10 of a second. So you can only change a variable 10 times a second. But you can see, and if you could see my other screen, you would see my player 1 would be moving on that side. But here's my player 2 on this side. It's also really laggy because I'm recording. But it works. It works, and you can have player 3 and 4 on here. You could add scrolling to this if you want. It'd pretty much be the same thing. You just need to add the scrolling mechanics. And just adjust the my X and my Y or whatever. So that's it, and it supports 4 players. That's basically it. I hope it was easy to understand. And you can also check to see, make sure that it's working. Right here, you see the data, and then you go into here, and you can see at what everybody was setting the cloud variables to. So that's P1 and P2 right there. That's what I was setting, which is good. It works. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned from it. So basically all that's happening, we're just constantly decoding and setting to the cloud. We find the slot at the beginning, check to see which ones are active, and we build those lists. So we build the lists, which tells these guys, the players, where to go. And that's important. This has to be a broadcast frame and wait, just in case you missed that. So it has to be a broadcast frame and wait. Make sure that everybody gets everything they need. So that's everything. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you. Hope you have fun with this.